The great hall of the Velfanny Palace was filled with aliens from 100 different worlds. They wore bright colors and strange jewels. They spoke in languages that clicked and hummed and sang. And they all moved away when the warden walked past. Jake Morrison watched them through the dark glass of his helmet. He saw the fear in their eyes. He saw how they pulled their children close. He saw how they whispered to each other and pointed at his black armor. He was used to it now. 2 years of hiding inside this metal shell had taught him that fear was better than the truth. The truth would get him killed. He walked 3 steps behind Princess Lorraine Velfanny, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. She moved through the crowd like water flowing through stones. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were like pools of silver light. She smiled at everyone and spoke soft words that made them feel important. She was good at this. She had been born for a. Jake had been born on a small farm in Kansas. Now he was a ghost in armor, protecting a princess who did not know what he was. "You are very quiet tonight, Warden," Liriel said without turning around. Her voice was gentle, like wind through tall grass. "I am always quiet, Your Highness," Jake replied. His helmet changed his voice, made it sound deep and strange, and not human at all. "Yes, but tonight your silence feels heavy." She glanced back at him with those silver eyes. "Is something wrong?" Everything was wrong. 3 days ago, Jake had learned that the Galactic Concord had increased the bounty on humans. They called his species dangerous. They called them unpredictable. They said humans were animals that walked like people, and they should be locked away on their dying planet forever. Jake had not seen Earth in 4 years. He did not know if his mother was still alive. He did not know if his sister had found safety. He only knew that every day he stayed hidden was another day he survived. "Nothing is wrong, Your Highness," he said. "I am simply watching." Liriel smiled. It was a sad smile, like she knew he was lying but chose not to push. "Very well, my silent guardian. Keep watching." The night went on. Jake stood in corners and watched doorways. He counted exits and studied faces. He noticed a young Krethian male who kept looking at the princess with too much focus. The Krethian's hands were shaking. His eyes were too wide. Jake moved closer. The Krethian pulled a blade from his sleeve and ran toward Liro. Jake was faster. He caught the assassin's wrist and twisted. The blade fell to the floor with a sharp ring. Jake pushed the Krethian down and put a knee on his back. The crowd screamed and scattered. Guards rushed forward with weapons raised. "Do not kill him," Liriel commanded. Her voice was calm but firm. Jake looked down at the assassin. The Krethian was young, maybe 17 in human years. His eyes were full of tears. He was shaking badly now, not from anger, but from fear. "Please," the boy whispered. "They have my family. They said if I did not do this, they would kill my mother and sisters." Jake felt something twist in his chest. He knew that feeling. He knew what it meant to do terrible things to protect the people you loved. The guards reached them. "Move aside, Warden. We will take him to the cells." Jake did not move. He looked at the boy's face and saw himself 4 years ago. Scared, alone, willing to do anything to survive. "He is just a child," Jake said. "He tried to kill the princess," a guard replied. "The law is clear." Jake leaned close to the boy's ear. His voice was low enough that only the assassin could hear. "There is a service tunnel behind the East Garden. The guards change shift in 10 minutes. Run and do not stop until you reach the lower city. Find a woman named Amy Reyes at the docking bay. Tell her the warden sent you. She will help your family." The boy's eyes went wide with shock. Jake stood up and stepped back. He slipped away. I could not hold him. The guards stared at him. One of them laughed nervously. The warden could not hold a small boy? That is hard to believe. Believe what you want, Jake said. He is gone now. The guards cursed and ran after the boy, but Jake knew they would not catch him. The service tunnel was hidden well, and the boy was fast when he was running toward hope, instead of death. Lyra watched all of this with those silver eyes that seemed to see everything. When the crowd had calmed and the guards had given up their search, she walked to Jake's side. "You let him go," she said quietly. "I do not know what you mean." "Your Highness, you are a terrible liar, Warden." She tilted her head, studying his helmet like she was trying to see through the dark glass. "Why, he tried to kill me." Most guards would have broken his neck without a thought. Jake was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "He was not a killer, Your Highness. He was a boy with no choices. There is a difference." Lyriel's eyes softened. "You speak like someone who understands what it means to have no choices." Jake did not answer. He could not answer. If he started talking about his past, he might never stop, and then she would know. She would know what he was, and everything would end. "Who are you, really?" Lyriel asked. "Under all that armor, who are you?" "I am no one important," Jake said. "Just a shadow that keeps you safe." Lyriel shook her head slowly. "No, you are more than that. I have watched you for 2 years, Warden. You fight like a demon, but you show mercy like a saint. You never speak of yourself, but you listen when others speak of their pain. You are not just a warrior. You are something else. Something you are hiding." Jake's heart beat faster inside his armor. She was too smart. She saw too much. "Whatever I am hiding," he said carefully, "I am hiding it to protect you. Some truths are dangerous, Your Highness. Some truths can start wars." Lyriel stepped closer. She was so close now that Jake could smell the flowers in her hair, could see the tiny lights that sparkled in her silver eyes. "Then let me ask you one thing," she said. "And I want an honest answer." Jake waited. "Do you serve me because of the money? Or is there another reason?" Jake thought about lying. It would be easy. It would be safe. But something about the way she looked at him made the lie stick in his throat. "I serve you," he said slowly, "because you are the first person in 4 years who has spoken to me like I am a person and not a monster." Lyriel blinked. For a moment, something like pain crossed her face. Then she smiled, and it was the warmest smile Jake had ever seen. "Then I will keep speaking to you that way," she said, "until the day you trust me enough to show me who you really are." She turned and walked away, leaving Jake alone in the great hall. He watched her go and felt something strange in his chest. It was hope. Small and fragile, but real. He had forgotten what hope felt like. The royal starship moved through the darkness of space like a silver fish swimming through a black ocean. It was a beautiful ship, built for comfort and speed. Princess Lyriel loved to stand at the observation windows and watch the stars go by. Jake stood behind her, always watching, always silent. They had been traveling for 6 days now. The diplomatic mission to the Korath system would take 2 more weeks. Jake did not mind the long journey. On the ship, there were fewer strangers, fewer eyes watching him, fewer chances for someone to discover his secret. But Commander Draylen was a problem. The Velthani, military officer, had never liked Jake. He was a tall alien with dark purple skin and 4 arms. His yellow eyes followed Jake everywhere, full of suspicion and anger. He did not trust anyone who hid their face. He did not trust anyone who refused to answer questions about their past. "You spend too much time with that creature," Draylen said to Lyriel one evening. They were in the ship's main hall, and Draylen clearly thought Jake could not hear from across the room. But Jake's armor had good sensors. He heard everything. "The Warden is my protector," Lyriel replied calmly. "Where else would he be? In his quarters, like a proper servant." not standing at your side like an equal. Draylen's voice was sharp. We know nothing about him. We do not know his species. We do not know his face. We do not even know if he is truly alive inside that armor or just a machine. He is alive, Lirael said. I am certain of that. How can you be certain? Have you seen his face? Lirael was quiet for a moment. No, but I have seen his heart. That is enough. Draylen made a sound of disgust and walked away. Jake stayed perfectly still and pretended he had heard nothing. That night, Lirael invited Jake to her private chambers. She often did this when she could not sleep. She would read old poems from a warm book, and Jake would stand by the door and listen. He never sat down. He never removed his helmet. But he listened to every word. This one is from an old Velfani poet, Lirael said. She sat by the window with the starlight falling on her blue skin. She wrote it 300 years ago, when our people first traveled to the stars. She read the poem in her native language first, then translated it into common speech for Jake. It was about a traveler who left home to find something beautiful and discovered that the most beautiful thing was the memory of home itself. Jake felt his eyes burn inside his helmet. He blinked hard and said nothing. Did you like it? Lirael asked. Yes, Your Highness. You always say yes. I wonder sometimes if you truly mean it, or if you are just being polite. I mean it, Jake said. His voice sounded rough, even through the synthesizer. I understand what it means to miss home. Lirael looked at him with those silver eyes. Do you miss your home, Warden? Jake did not answer for a long time. Then he said, every day. The next morning, everything changed. A distress signal came through the ship's communication system. It was weak and broken, but the message was clear. A refugee ship had been attacked by pirates. They were damaged and drifting. They had wounded on board. They needed help. Captain Velthros, the ship's commander, wanted to ignore the signal. It is not our concern, he said. We have a schedule to keep. The diplomatic mission cannot be delayed. Jake stepped forward before he could stop himself. There are children on that ship. Everyone turned to look at him. Jake rarely spoke in meetings. He rarely spoke at all unless Lirael spoke to him first. How do you know that? Draylen demanded. The distress signal, Jake said. If you listen carefully, you can hear them crying in the background. The room was silent. Then Lirael stood up from her chair. We will help them, she said. That is my order. The rescue took most of the day. Jake worked harder than anyone else. He carried wounded aliens to the medical bay. He helped repair damaged life support systems. He held frightened children and told them everything would be okay. One small alien child would not stop crying. She was from a species Jake did not recognize, with soft fur and big round eyes. She had lost her mother in the attack and did not understand where she had gone. Jake knelt down in front of her. His armor was covered in dust and blood, but his movements were gentle. Hey, he said softly. Hey, little one. Look at me. The child looked up at his dark helmet with terrified eyes. I know I look scary, Jake said, but I promise I am not going to hurt you. I am going to keep you safe. Do you understand? The child sniffled and nodded slowly. Good. Now, I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? Can you be brave? The child nodded again. That is very good. You are very strong. Your mother would be proud of you. The child reached out and touched Jake's helmet with one small paw. Jake stayed perfectly still and let her touch him. After a moment, the child stopped crying. She leaned forward and rested her head against his chest plate. Jake carefully put one armored hand on her back and held her close. Lirael watched from the doorway. Her eyes were wet with tears. Later that night, after the refugees had been settled and the ship was moving again, Jake received a message on his private channel. It was from Amy Reyes. "Jake, we have a problem," Amy's voice said. She sounded worried. "Bounty hunters are asking questions at every port in this sector. They are looking for a human mercenary who works for the Velthani. Someone is offering a lot of money. You need to be careful." Jake closed his eyes inside his helmet. He'd been careful for 2 years. But careful was not enough anymore. They were getting closer. He went to check on the refugees one more time before returning to his post. As he walked through the medical bay, he did not notice the loose panel on the wall. His shoulder caught the edge, and he stumbled. He threw out his hand to catch himself, and his armored glove struck the wall hard. The impact cracked the seal on his wrist. A small piece of his armor broke away, revealing a patch of pale skin underneath. Jake looked down at the crack with horror. He needed to fix this. He needed to fix this right now. "Warden?" Jake turned around. Lyriel was standing behind him. She was looking at his wrist. At the pale skin showing through the crack, their eyes met. Jake could not breathe. Lyriel tilted her head slowly. Her expression was unreadable. "That is a strange color for a Velthani, or a Korath, or any species I know of." Jake said nothing. His heart was pounding so hard, he was sure she could hear it. Lyriel stepped closer. She reached out and gently touched the exposed skin with one blue finger. Jake flinched but did not pull away. "Warm," she said quietly. "Soft. Living." She looked up at his helmet. "What are you hiding, my guardian?" Jake swallowed hard. "Something dangerous, Your Highness. Something that could destroy everything." Lyriel was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled her hand back and smiled that sad, knowing smile. "Then I will pretend I saw nothing," she said, "until you are ready to show me yourself." She turned and walked away, leaving Jake alone with his cracked armor and his terrified heart. She knew. She did not know what he was, but she knew he was hiding something big, God, and she had chosen to protect him anyway. Jake pressed his hand against the crack in his armor and felt the cold air touch his skin for the first time in months. He wondered how much longer he could keep running from the truth. The neutral station of Kalos Prime was one of the largest space stations in the galaxy. It floated in the empty space between 3 star systems, belonging to no one and everyone at the same time. Today, it was hosting peace negotiations between the Velthani Dominion and the Korath Republic. Hundreds of diplomats, guards, and servants filled its massive halls, and somewhere among them, hunters were searching for Jake. He felt it the moment they arrived. Something was wrong. The station felt different from other places he had visited. There were too many people watching, too many eyes that looked at him for too long. Too many whispers that stopped when he walked by. "You seem nervous today, Warden," Lyriel said as they walked toward the negotiation chamber. She wore a beautiful silver dress that sparkled like starlight. She looked like a queen. "I am always nervous when you are in danger, Your Highness," Jake replied. "Am I in danger here? This is a peace conference. Peace conferences are where people let down their guard. That makes them perfect places for attacks." Lyriel smiled slightly. "You see enemies everywhere. That is why you are still alive." The negotiations were long and boring. Jake stood by the wall and watched everything. He watched the Korath diplomats with their cold eyes and sharp teeth. He watched Commander Draylen whispering with his officers. He watched the servants who moved through the room, carrying drinks and food. He watched, and he waited, and he worried. During a break in the talks, Jake slipped away to scan the station's security systems. What he found made his blood run cold. 3 ships had arrived that morning with no proper registration. Their passengers had spread through the station quickly, and all of them were carrying weapons that were supposed to be illegal. Jake recognized the type. They were bounty hunters, but not ordinary bounty hunters. These were members of the Pure Galaxy movement, a group that believed humans were a disease that needed to be wiped out. They had killed human refugees on 6 different worlds. They had burned human settlements to Ashdod, and now they were here, looking for him. Jake returned to the negotiation chamber with his hand on his weapon. He needed to get Lyriel out of here. He needed to run, but it was already too late. Commander Draylen was standing in the middle of the room with a scanning device in his hand. He was pointing it directly at Jake. "I knew it," Draylen said loudly. Everyone in the room turned to look. "I knew there was something wrong with you, Warden. My new scanner can see through any armor in the galaxy. Do you want to know what it found?" Jake said nothing. His whole body was tense. "It found human DNA," Draylen announced. His voice was filled with disgust and triumph. "Our princess has been protected by a human for 2 years. A human. The most dangerous species in the galaxy has been standing at her side this whole time." The room exploded with noise. Diplomats shouted in fear and anger. Guards raised their weapons. Servants screamed and ran for the doors. "Remove your helmet," Draylen commanded. "Show everyone what you really are." Jake looked at Lyriel. She was standing very still, her silver eyes fixed on him. She did not look afraid. She did not look angry. She looked like she was waiting to see what he would do next. "I will not," Jake said. Draylen stepped forward. "You do not have a choice. You are under arrest for deception, for violating Concord law, for endangering the princess. Remove your helmet or we will remove it for you." "Draylen," Lyriel said quietly, "stop this. I am protecting you, Your Highness. This creature has been lying to you since the day you hired him. He has also saved my life 17 times. Does that mean nothing?" "He is human," Draylen spat. "Everything they do is lies and violence. It is in their nature. They cannot help it." Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. He had heard these words before. He had heard them on the news when Earth was quarantined. He had heard them from the aliens who refused to let him board their ships. He had heard them from the bounty hunters who killed his friends. He was so tired of hearing them. The doors at the far end of the room burst open. A dozen armed figures rushed in, their weapons raised. Jake recognized them immediately. Pure Galaxy movement. They were here. "Everyone stay where you are," the leader shouted. He was a tall alien with scars covering his face. "We are here for the human. Give him to us, and no one else needs to die." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Jake. Draylen smiled coldly. "It seems the problem is solving itself. Take him. We will not stand in your way." "No," Lyriel said. She stepped forward, putting herself between Jake and the bounty hunters. "Your Highness, move," Jake said urgently. "I will not," she replied. Her voice was calm but strong. "This man is under my protection." The scarred leader laughed. "A princess protecting a human? That is almost funny. Step aside, little royal. This does not concern you. Everything that happens to my people concerns me. And the warden is my people. He is not your people. He is a monster wearing armor. Then let us see this monster for ourselves." Lyriel turned to face Jake. "Warden, Jake, please, show them who you are." Jake's hands were shaking. He looked at the bounty hunters with their weapons ready to fire. He looked at Draylen with his cold smile. He looked at Lyriel with her steady eyes and her absolute faith. 2 years of hiding. 2 years of fear. 2 years of pretending to be something he was not. He was so tired. Slowly, Jake reached up and pressed the release on his helmet. The seals hissed. The helmet lifted free. And for the first time in 2 years, Jake Morrison showed his face to the universe. He was human. Pale skin, brown eyes, brown hair cut short. He had scars on his cheek and his jaw from fights he had barely survived. He looked tired. He looked afraid. He looked like a man who had been running for too long. The room gasped. Some aliens stepped back in horror. Others raised their weapons higher. The scarred leader pointed his gun at Jake's exposed head. There. Now we can see the animal for what it is. Say goodbye, human. Stop. Lyriel's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She stepped closer to Jake, close enough to touch. I have seen this man's face now, she said to the room. I have seen the monster you were all so afraid of. Do you know what I see? No one answered. I see a man who has protected me with his life. I see a man who showed mercy to a child who tried to kill me. I see a man who held a frightened orphan and told her everything would be okay. I see a man who cried when I read him poetry about home. She turned to face the bounty hunters, the guards, the diplomats. If this is what a monster looks like, then I think we have been using that word wrong. She looked at Draylen. Lower your weapons. Your Highness, I cannot allow. That was not a request, Commander. I am the heir to the Velthani throne. This man is under my protection. Anyone who harms him will answer to me. The room was frozen. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, slowly, the Velthani guards lowered their weapons. Draylen's face twisted with anger, but he did not give the order to fire. The Scar bounty hunter snarled. This is not over. The Concord will hear about this. A Velthani princess protecting a human? Your people will turn against you. Then let them come, Lyriel said. She reached out and took Jake's hand in hers. Her blue fingers were cold against his warm skin. I will not abandon someone simply because others are afraid of him. She looked at Jake with those silver eyes, and she smiled. I told you I would keep speaking to you like a person. I meant it. Jake could not speak. His throat was too tight. His eyes were burning with tears he had held back for years, for the first time since Earth was quarantined. Someone had stood up for him. For the first time, someone had chosen him over their own safety. He squeezed her hand gently and found his voice. Thank you, he whispered. Do not thank me yet, Lyriel replied. We still have to survive this. The cell was small but clean. Jake sat on the narrow bed and stared at the wall. His helmet was gone. His armor had been taken. He wore simple gray clothes now, the kind they gave to prisoners waiting for trial. For 3 days he had sat in this cell, waiting. Lyriel had kept her promise. She had protected him from the bounty hunters and the angry guards. She had demanded that he be treated with dignity. She had insisted that he receive a proper trial instead of being handed over to the pure galaxy movement. But a trial was coming, and Jake did not know what would happen when it did. The door to his cell opened. 2 guards stood outside, their weapons ready. It is time, one of them said. The court is waiting. Jake stood up and walked between them. They led him through long hallways and up wide stairs. Finally, they entered the royal court of the Velthani Dominion. The room was massive. Hundreds of aliens sat in tall chairs that rose up the walls like seats in a stadium. At the front of the room was a raised platform where 5 judges sat in silver robes. And beside the platform, in a smaller chair, sat Princess Lyriel. She looked at Jake as he entered, and she gave him a small nod. Jake was led to a circle in the center of the floor. He stood there alone, with everyone staring down at him. He felt like an insect under a magnifying glass. The head judge, an ancient Velthani with pale skin and tired eyes, spoke first. Jake Morrison, human, you stand accused of 3 crimes. First, deception of the royal family. Second, operating under false identity in violation of Concord law. Third, being human within protected space without proper registration. The judge paused. How do you respond to these charges? Jake looked around the room at all the faces watching him. Some were curious. Some were afraid. Some were filled with hate. I did hide my identity, Jake said. His voice was steady, even though his heart was pounding. I did pretend to be something I was not. But I did these things to survive, not to cause harm. A murmur went through the crowd. The judge raised his hand for silence. You may speak further. Tell us your story. Jake took a deep breath. He had never told anyone the full truth before, not even Lyrael. But now there was no more hiding. Now there was only the truth. 4 years ago, the Galactic Concord declared humans a quarantined species. They said we were too dangerous to be allowed in civilized space. They said our violence and our unpredictability made us a threat to everyone. He paused, remembering. When the order came, I was working as a ship mechanic on a trading station. I was far from Earth, far from home. The Concord gave us 30 days to return to our planet. But there were not enough ships. There were not enough seats. Millions of humans were stranded across the galaxy with no way to get home. Jake's hands curled into fists at his sides. The bounty hunters came next. They said humans were animals. They said we did not deserve to live among civilized people. They started killing us. Not arresting us. Killing us. Men, women, children. It did not matter. To them, we were all the same. We were all monsters. The room was very quiet now. I found the armor on a dead mercenary. I did not know what species he was. I never saw his face. I only knew that his armor could hide what I was. So I put it on and I started running. Jake looked at Lyrael. Her eyes were wet with tears. I ran for 2 years. I took jobs no one else would take. I protected people who needed protecting. And then I found Princess Lyrael. He turned back to the judges. In 2 years of serving her, I had 17 chances to let her die. 17 times when I could have walked away with my payment and disappeared. But I stayed. Not because of the money. Because she was the first person since the quarantine who treated me like I was worth something. Jake's voice cracked slightly, but he kept going. I am not asking you to change your laws. I am not asking you to forgive humans for whatever crimes you think we have committed. I am only asking you to judge me by what I have done, not by what species I was born as. The room was silent. The judges whispered among themselves. Then a voice rang out from the crowd. This is ridiculous. A Kareth diplomat stood up, his cold eyes fixed on Jake. We have all heard the stories about humans. They are violent. They are cruel. They destroyed their own planet with wars and pollution. This creature speaks pretty words, but we all know what humans are capable of. Other voices joined in. Soon the room was filled with shouts and accusations. My cousin was killed by a human pirate. They burned 3 colonies during the expansion wars. They cannot be trusted. Jake listened to the hate pouring down on him and felt something inside him start to break. They did not want the truth. They wanted a villain. They wanted someone to blame for all the fear and pain in the galaxy dot, and he was the easiest target. Enough. Lyrael's voice cut through the noise. She stood up from her chair and walked to the center of the floor, standing beside Jake. I have listened to your fear, she said to the crowd. Now you will listen to me. She turned in a slow circle, meeting the eyes of everyone who had spoken against Jake. You say humans are violent, but I have watched this human show mercy to a child who tried to kill me. You say humans are cruel, but I have watched this human hold an orphan girl and comfort her when no one else would. You say humans cannot be trusted, but this human has kept every promise he ever made to me. She pointed at the Korath diplomat who had spoken first. You say your cousin was killed by a human pirate. I am sorry for your loss. But should I judge all Korath by the actions of your criminals? Should I fear every Korath child because some Karth have done terrible things? The diplomat looked away, his face red with shame. Lyrael continued. Every species in this room has committed acts of violence. Every species has individuals who have done terrible things. But we do not quarantine entire worlds for the actions of a few. We do not declare whole species to be monsters. She walked closer to Jake and took his hand in hers. I have seen this man's heart. I have seen his pain and his hope and his fear. And I tell you now, as the heir to the Velthani throne, that Jake Morrison is not a monster. He is a hero who was never allowed to be one. The room was completely silent. Commander Draylen stood up slowly. His face was hard to read, but there was something different in his eyes now. Something that almost looked like respect. I have served the royal family for 30 years, he said. In that time, I have seen many warriors, many protectors, many who claim to be loyal. He looked at Jake. I have never seen anyone protect the princess the way the warden has. I did not trust him because I did not understand him. But I cannot deny what I have witnessed with my own eyes. He paused, then said the words that shocked everyone in the room. His service has been honorable. Whatever else he may be, that much is true. Lyrael smiled at Draylen. Then she turned to the judges. I ask this court to delay its judgment. Let the Galactic Concord hear Jake Morrison's story. Let them decide if their laws are just, or if their fear has made them blind. The head judge looked at his colleagues. They whispered for a long moment. Finally, the judge spoke. The verdict is suspended. Jake Morrison will remain in custody, but he will be treated as a guest, not a prisoner. The Galactic Concord will be informed. A hearing will be scheduled. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. It was not freedom. It was not safety, but it was a chance. Lyrael squeezed his hand and leaned close. We are not done fighting yet, she whispered. But today, we won a battle. Jake looked at her with eyes full of gratitude he could not put into words. Why? He asked. Why are you doing this for me? Lyrael smiled that warm, knowing smile. Because you would do the same for me. Because that is what friends do. Friends. Jake had forgotten he could have those. He held onto her hand and let himself believe, just for a moment, that everything might be okay. The guest quarters were much nicer than the cell. Jake had a real bed now, with soft blankets and a window that looked out at the stars. He had clean clothes and good food and permission to walk in the palace gardens under guard, supervision, but he was still a prisoner. He was still waiting for the galaxy to decide if he deserved to live. Lyrael visited him every evening. They would sit by the window and talk about small things at first. The weather on different worlds. The food she had eaten at diplomatic dinners. The book she was reading. But slowly, they started talking about bigger things too. What was Earth like? Lyrael asked one night. Jake was quiet for a moment, remembering. It was beautiful, and terrible, and wonderful, all at the same time. He smiled sadly. We had blue skies and green forests and oceans that stretched further than you could see. We had cities that touched the clouds and villages where everyone knew your name. It sounds lovely. It was. It was. But it was also broken. We fought wars over land and resources. We polluted our air and our water. We made mistakes that we could never fix. Jake looked at her. I think that is why the Concord fears us so much. Not because we are monsters, but because we are messy. We are complicated. We do not fit into neat categories. Lyrael nodded slowly. The galaxy prefers things to be simple. Good and evil. Safe and dangerous. It is easier than admitting that most things are both at once. Is that what you see when you look at me? Jake asked. Both at once? Lyrael reached out and touched his hand. I see a man who has done hard things to survive. I see a man who has been hurt and is afraid of being hurt again. I see a man who is far from home and does not know if he will ever see it again. She squeezed his fingers gently. I see someone who deserves a chance to prove that he is more than his worst moments. Jake felt tears prick in his eyes. He had been strong for so long. He had hidden his pain behind armor and silence. But here, in this quiet room with this gentle princess, he finally felt safe enough to be weak. "Thank you," he whispered the next morning. Everything changed. Commander Draylen came to Jake's quarters with urgent news. The Galactic Concord Summit was being held in 3 days. Representatives from every major civilization would be there. And somehow, Draylen had learned that the Pure Galaxy movement was planning an attack. "They want to prove that humans are violent," Draylen explained. "They are going to attack the summit and blame it on you. They have forged evidence. They have planted witnesses. By the time the smoke clears, the entire galaxy will believe that a human terrorist tried to assassinate the Concord leaders." Jake felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Then humanity will never be free. They will use this as proof that we deserve to be quarantined forever. "Or worse," Draylen said quietly. "Some in the Concord are already calling for extermination. If this attack succeeds, they may get their wish." Jake stood up. His hands were steady now, his fear replaced by something harder and stronger. "I have to stop them." Draylen looked at him with surprise. "You would risk your life to save the Concord? The same people who declared your species to be animals." "I am not doing it for the Concord," Jake said. "I am doing it for all the humans who are still hiding. For all the children who have never seen Earth. For everyone who deserves a chance to prove they are more than what others believe about them." Lyriel appeared in the doorway. She had been listening. "Then I am coming with you," she said. "No." Jake shook his head firmly. "It is too dangerous. If something happens to you, if something happens to me, it will be my choice." Lyriel stepped closer, her silver eyes burning with determination. "You protected me for 2 years. Now it is my turn to stand beside you. Not as your princess, as your equal." Jake opened his mouth to argue, but the look on her face stopped him. He had seen that look before, when she stood between him and the bounty hunters. When she told the entire galaxy that he was worth protecting, she would not be moved. "Fine," he said. "But you stay behind me. And if I tell you to run, you run." Lyriel smiled. "I will consider it." The Concord Summit was held in a massive hall at the center of Kalos Prime Station. Thousands of delegates filled the seats. Cameras broadcast the proceedings to every world in the galaxy. Jake and Lyriel entered through a service tunnel that Draylen had shown them. They moved quietly through the shadows, looking for any sign of the attackers. They found them in the ventilation system above the main stage. 12 members of the Pure Galaxy movement, armed with explosives and weapons. They were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Jake looked at Lyriel. She nodded. They attacked. The fight was fast and brutal. Jake had no armor now, no helmet to protect him. He fought with his bare hands and a stolen weapon, moving faster than any human should be able to move. He had learned to fight in the worst places in the galaxy. He had learned to survive when surviving seemed impossible, and now he fought to save the people who wanted him dead. Lyriel fought beside him. She was not a warrior, but she was brave. She used a piece of broken pipe as a weapon, striking at anyone who tried to get past Jake to the explosives. One by one, the attackers fell. Jake did not kill any of them. He broke arms and legs. He knocked them unconscious. He showed mercy even when mercy was not expected, because that was who he was. When the last attacker was down, Jake grabbed the explosives and disabled them with shaking hands. The summit hall below was still peaceful. The delegates did not know how close they had come to death. Then the security teams arrived. They found Jake and Lyriel surrounded by unconscious attackers, the bomb safely neutralized. The story spread quickly. A human had saved the Galactic Concorde. A human had stopped an attack that would have killed thousands. A human had shown mercy to his enemies when violence would have been justified. The summit was delayed while the delegates processed what had happened. Then, slowly, the questions began. Why did you do it? One Concorde leader asked Jake. We have done nothing but hurt your kind. Why would you risk your life for us? Jake looked at the alien with tired eyes. Because if I killed your people to prove that humans are not violent, I would only prove that we are. The only way to change what you believe about us is to show you something different. The room was very quiet. Another leader spoke. The quarantine has been in place for 4 years. In that time, we have heard only bad things about humans. Violence, chaos, destruction. She paused. Today we saw something else. Today we saw mercy and courage and sacrifice. She looked at her colleagues. I propose that we reconsider the human quarantine. I propose that we give them a chance to show us who they truly are. The vote was not unanimous. Some leaders still clung to their fear. But for the first time in 4 years, the motion passed. The quarantine would be reviewed. Humans would be allowed to speak for themselves. It was not freedom yet. But it was a beginning. After the summit, Lyriel found Jake standing alone by a window, looking out at the stars. You did it, she said softly. You changed everything. Jake shook his head. We did it. I could not have done any of this without you. Lyriel smiled and stood beside him. So what happens now? I do not know. Maybe I go home. Maybe I keep fighting for my people. Maybe I just rest for the first time in 4 years. He looked at her. What about you? I have a speech to give, Lyriel said. The delegates want to hear from the princess who stood beside a human. They want to understand why I did it. And what will you tell them? Lyriel took his hand. The truth. That I met a man who wore armor because the galaxy taught him that his face was something to hide. And that he showed me it was something worth seeing. She led him back into the summit hall. The cameras were still rolling. Every world in the galaxy was watching. Lyriel stepped up to the podium and spoke. This is Jake Morrison, she said, gesturing to the human standing beside her. He was my guardian, my protector, my friend. For 2 years, he hid his face because he was afraid of what you would do if you saw the truth. She looked at the cameras, at the billions of beings watching across the stars. Today, he stands before you unmasked. Not as a monster, not as an animal, but as a man who chose mercy when the galaxy gave him every reason to choose violence. She turned to Jake. Would you like to say something? Jake looked at the cameras. He looked at the delegates. He looked at all the faces that had feared him, hated him, wanted him dead. Then he spoke. I wore armor because the galaxy taught me that my face was something to hide. His voice was steady, strong, and human. Your princess taught me it was something worth showing. I hope one day, all my people will have the chance to be seen the same way. The room was silent. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Then another. And another. The applause spread through the hall like a wave. Jake stood beside Lyriel, his face uncovered, his heart finally free. For the first time in 4 years, he was not afraid. And that was enough.